Good morning. Welcome to News Centre. Let's look at developing stories for you at this hour. Oriwa Boys High School in Homa Bay County is the latest casualty in a wave of school fires, destroying learning institutions in the country. The fire gutted a dormitory at the school, with police launching investigations to establish the cause of the fire. And now the Ministry of Education is once again on the spotlight following the rising cases of unrest in schools, even as the national exams draw closer. Education authorities say they are still investigating the latest cases. Caroline B takes a look at some of these unrest stories.
The dreaded second-term curse is once again brewing. Sunday, Chulaimbo High School in Kisumu County became the 7th school in Nyanza to be closed indefinitely, following in the bad examples of Kisumu Girls, Nia Girls, Maranda High School, Maliera Boys, Ambira High School and Otieno Oyo Secondary School, which was shut down to avert further destruction of property after students rioted.
We have taken a few boys to the police, whom we feel should be questioned to give more information.
This year, there has been substantial improvement on managing unrests, which are usually a challenge in our second term. We've not had more than 30 cases of incidences across the country. There's been very minimal number of fires this year.
The latest unrest is not only sweeping the Nyanza region. In Baringo County, students in 5 schools went on rampage, among them Ruben Cheruiyot High School, Majimoto Secondary School, Kisanana High School, Timboroa Secondary School, Rosoga Secondary School and Tenges Boys High School, where 5 dormitories were razed down. In Kamagut High School in Uasin Gishu County, 2 dormitories housing more than 150 students went up in flames. Kianguli Mixed Secondary School in Makueni County was also shut down after condoms, phones and paraffin containers were found in the boys' dormitories. Shalby Boys High School in Marsabit County was closed indefinitely after students attacked 6 non-local teachers, injuring 2 of them seriously. 9 students have already been charged in court in connection with the violence, as the Teachers Service Commission plans to transfer 12 non-local teachers from the school.
This is a criminal activity, and nobody will be spared.
The strife has put the Ministry of Education on the spot on the implementation of various reports seeking to find a solution. A report released last year, born out of the 2016 strife that saw over 483 schools experience unrest, cited mock examinations as a problem, giving students pressure to perform. Late May, education stakeholders in Baringo County banned mock exams, citing poor level of preparedness among the students, a likely reason for the constant rampage. However, most schools have not yet implemented the 2017 report, quoting lack of funds. Since the year started, more than 33 schools have witnessed unrest compared to 67 schools last year. In 2016, 239 cases of arson were reported in schools. The Education Ministry has ordered principals to file daily reports of their schools for scrutiny purposes. Even as PS Belio Kipsang insists KCSE examinations will go on as planned. Strict exams rules were passed in 2016 to curb irregularities, which caused panic among students, leading to strife.
Structures have been put in place to ensure the integrity of examinations this year meets the expectations of the Kenyan people.
The ministry has warned that students who cause disturbances and damage of property will be treated as criminals. Caroline B, KTN News.
Okay, so that is one of the top stories we're following up for you this morning. We are getting other reports as well that emergency teams are responding to fire incidents at Gadera Boys in Meru, St. Mary's Girls in Kakamega and Kadiege Mixed in Homa Bay. Cause of the fires is still unknown. These are stories that we are following up for you. We are trying to send our teams down there just to get to understand what exactly is going on in the schools. Let's have a conversation with Amos Kaburu. He's an education expert. Amos, good morning. Good to speak to you. So let's start from that story by Caroline Bay. And she says fingers are being pointed at mock exams. Do you think this is the origin of the problem?
Thank you, Linda, and good morning to our viewers on KTN News. This is not the first time that we're having these cases of school unrest, and there are possible hypotheses to put forward. There is always the fear of examinations, considering the trend that we've witnessed, especially in the last 10 years, where this wave has always taken shape towards second term. But realistically speaking, these fires are not necessarily instigated by the Form 4 students who will be the ones sitting for KCSE examinations. The reality of the matter is that school unrest are likely to pick a form of a wave, which is very cyclic in nature. And even when we think that we manage communication in terms of access to information that is externally driven from the student community, it's interesting to realize how this information still finds its way within the student community. And there's lots of excitement that students pick up these issues, and you see that these fires keep on going and going. And the ministry has been a little bit strategic in terms of how to address these issues. But I do not think that the ministry has really understood the nature and the DNA of how to manage our schools to the extent that we could try to solve these issues in the long term. We rather more symptomatic rather than addressing the real issues that cause this kind of student unrest.
From where you sit, Kaburu, what are the real issues? I was having a conversation with you about this, and you're saying schools are more or less like prisons for most of the students. And probably this is part of the reason why we are seeing this.
Yes. Actually, that is the root cause. If you look at the structure of our education, particularly in secondary school, it is very frustrating to be a high school student or to be a student in secondary school. Just imagine what you and I went through. You sit in a class from 8 to 5 in the evening listening to people. Some school students have to wake up as early as 4 a.m. They go to sleep as late as 11. They are surviving on 3 meals in a day. You wake up, you take your breakfast for as early as before 6, which would maybe just be a cup of porridge. You wait for around 10 when you're served with something small, just a snack. Then at 1, you have to queue and get a meal that looks like close to a meal, but it's not a meal. In the evening, the same. You're putting on uniform. You're living in congested environments called hostels, or in fact, I don't think that even our secondary school, most of them have hostels. They are more or less dormitories. It kind of looks like...
I'm losing you.
It looks almost close to solitary confinement. So we have serious problems of looking at how do we ensure that the kind of education we give to our children will, in a way, try to reduce the kind of pressure that we have. So because currently the system is so stressed, and you have children who are extremely frustrated. So when they get any mechanism, they have to vent it out in a very, very dangerous way. But secondly, it is a question of how school management is constructed to identify and resolve conflicts around the frustrations that the students have. So you have to think of a more democratization of our schools, not in just a way that you say that now students have to elect their representatives, but it now goes beyond that, so that you have got very open and genuine conversations that happen where students can express their displeasure and their dissatisfaction. 4 years ago, we were still having the same issue. People arguing that it was because of World Cup. Now, I don't think that this year is happening because of World Cup. Last year, we had the same spate of violence. So we have to go back to understand as school managers that what specifically would go into us to democratize our spaces where students feel that they can comfortably report on the challenges that they are facing, they can comfortably address the issues that they are having. Otherwise, if you do any spot check in most of our secondary schools, they are terrible institutions where one would never feel like you would want to relive your life in a secondary school.
Kaburu, you do realize we all went through that system. But tell me, so from where you sit, you don't think there are mechanisms in place to address some of the issues that these students have, even within their own schools? You don't think enough has been put in place?
I think that there are schools which we could perhaps single out. And in one of the studies which we are conducting, which will be effective schools necessarily safe schools, because an element of this unrest has got everything to do with school safety. And so you'll be looking at Kenya has more than 8,000 secondary schools. The spate of violence, even if it goes to the extreme, has never gone beyond 200 schools. So we also have to look at some of the schools that traditionally or in history have never had cases of school unrest. And there are schools in this country which are, in Kenya, there are schools in Kenya which are even running without school rules because they are based on values. So when you begin to realize, for instance, the model that Dr. Griffin had put in Starehe Boys Center, even where the gates will be left open, and the school will work on your values to an extent that you never feel like you need to sneak out of school. You feel that you are at home. You feel that there were enough mechanisms for you to address what was happening in these schools. You've got cases of Lugulu girls that for so long, when you look at the times when Mrs. Otieno and Mrs. Were were principals in this school, there are so many other schools which have never experienced any form of student unrest. What is it that worked there? So we have to begin to have a conversation on what works in effective management of schools, particularly where conflicts are concerned. Because you also to realize that we are going through a transitional moment at this time where there's been a lot of delocalization. And so as some of the principals seek to settle down, there are a lot of emotions that will be flaring up. There is a change of approach. This is a process that was hurried. So in most cases, we often tend to imagine that students are just the end users who will just receive, but we never have got mechanisms even to support them for them to transit from one institutional management approach towards the other one. So there is a lot that needs to be done, but it cannot just be done from the symptomatic approach. For instance, the way DCI says that we are now going to start profiling the students who engage in that. For your information, committee is always full. Committee has never run out of prisoners. And people know very well that if you break laws, you are going to be arrested. But why is it that people still keep on breaking rules? So I do not think that by us thinking of criminalizing what students are doing is going to be their solution in the long term. The minister has tried to do a lot. It has brought in policy considerations. Principals have to stay in school. They have to do this number of things. But it has not just been the solution to what we are facing. So we have to go back in terms of capacity building our principals and our managers of schools for them to begin to have early detection mechanisms that can detect where there are problems and be able to sit down with the stakeholders, particularly the students, and be able to address these issues before they happen. So there is a lot that needs to be. Yes.
Listen, so you don't think that, going back to the DCI, he said the Director of Criminal Investigations has warned students involved in school unrest that they will face criminal charges. Basically, the DCI is archiving and profiling every criminal act and consolidating charges that may be preferred to each and every student involved in any crime. Let every student be informed that it will automatically be reflected on the police clearance certificate. Do you think this is the way to go about it? Is this strictly a case of state of schools, or is it a case of indiscipline, or are these criminal elements within the schools?
First of all, just as I said, I do not think that the approach being taken by the DCI is going to help us in any given way, because just as I did say, we all of us have a constitution. We have the legal mechanisms in place. There is the penal code, but it has never stopped people from breaking the laws. So you cannot criminalize what is happening and expect that it's going to solve this problem. These are young people. You know them in your house. You tell them, don't do this. But they still do it even when they know that there are proper sanctions that my parents or my significant others have put in place. So I do not think that such a reactive mechanism is what is going to solve this problem per se, because for them, they are living in the present. What are you telling them when you tell them that 10 years from now, your report will still reflect your criminal record that was happening? And we live in a rather hypocritical society where there is fingers being pointed at certain individuals that they are seen to have done something, but they are still maybe in public office. They are sitting in certain places where action has not been taken against them. So I do not think that this solves it in any way. What we have to do is to have a conversation as school managers on what necessarily needs to go in to ensure that we reduce the level of pressure on the part of the students. Because as I said, what is happening is too much pressure in our schools. So we have to find a way in which students can find a way to relieve this pressure rather than keep on boiling up this pressure over a long period of time. Because if we do not contain it at the institutional level, at the school level, this wave is likely to continue. In the next 3 days, you could even have another more than 10 schools still again flaring up in arms.
Okay, Kaburu, in under a minute, how do we solve this? You said it's a matter of how the schools are being managed. We lack mechanisms to enable the students vent out when they have issues. How do we solve this short term? Because we're now seeing some sort of a copycat effect.
I think the very first thing that needs to happen is that boards of management of respective schools, all the schools in the country, need to urgently convene and have an early detection mechanism to establish the status of the schools and whether there are any form of indications that something could not be well. Because most of these things don't just happen out of the blues. There could be some signal somewhere that was left just to escalate. And number two, when these boards of management sit, they need to listen to the different stakeholders. Because in our experience in research, particularly in education, we've come to realize
realize that even some of the most powerful people in schools may not necessarily be the school principal. It could even be as powerful as the security guard. It could be as powerful as the cateress. That cook could be having a lot of influence and a lot of control over the students. So the boards of management need to urgently convene, sit down and detect the state of preparedness in case something is likely to happen. And this is what the Minister of Education should be supporting to ensure that these boards of management are given that leeway, where there is possibility that perhaps an issue would occur, they should be able to be allowed to close the school so that this tension can go down a little bit, even as now we engage in the long term in terms of what we need to do to democratize our schools and really find the long-term solutions to some of these challenges.
Amos Kaburu, always such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much. Talking to us about the school unrest that we're witnessing across the country. He says normally there are indications. I remember in my crisis class, I had a lecturer called Sister London. She used to call